Good day, sir. Today we will be discussing another topic, which is the non-homeostatic motivation. Now, what is this? The first requirement of any informed discussion of non-homeostatic behavior is to clearly define what that behavior is. Here are some important to consider in an operational definition of non-homeostatic appetitive behavior. These are number one, the quantity of the commodity consumed. Number two, the quality of type of commodity consumed. Three, the context in which the behavior occurs. And number four, the specific kind of behavior that is directed toward obtaining and consuming the commodity of interest. Non-homeostatic behaviors usually involve engaging in a certain behavior to an excessive amount, for instance, gambling compulsively or drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. Non-homeostatic eating, on the other hand, involves consuming too much or too little food related to what is biologically required or defined by homeostatic needs. It is quite normal of curse course to overeat and on some occasions and to undereat on others. It is regarded normal not only because of the consensus of our society, but also because homeostatic regulatory mechanism for the short term and adaptive regulation for the long term compensate for deficit and excesses within a certain regulatory range. We have elected to call such events compensated non-homeostatic eating. However, when overeating of or undereating occurs repetitively or excessively, mental and or physical health can become compromised. The behavior ceases to be normal and becomes maladaptive or dysfunctional. We have elected to use the term maladaptive because it refers to the failure to adapt appropriately. Adaptability is an essential feature of consumatory behavior that increases the chance of survival of organism. Individual excessive intake in other direction becomes maladaptive when it shortens life expectancy or increases the risk of disease. Maladaptive overeating promotes the development of obesity, while maladaptive undereating characterizes the eating disorder or anorexia nervosa. Recent evidence suggests that neural mechanism associated with obesity and anorexia nervosa among human subjects may overlap with mechanisms associated with substance abuse. The aspect of quality refers to the type of commodity toward which behavior is directed in the case of drug abuse. Quality would refer to the type of drug consumed, example, alcohol, cocaine, heroin, etc. Much research has focused on understanding the neurobiology biology involved in the overconsumption of fat and sugar. Conversely, consuming insufficient quantities of certain foods and or nutrients can certainly be non-homeostatic, as the many nutritional deficiency diseases demonstrate. However, even without inducing a nutrient deficiency, under consumption of certain foods and or nutrients may still be considered non-homeostatic. For instance, recent studies suggest that diets containing lower amounts of calcium and or low-fat dairy products can contribute to increased body weight. The specific expression of the behavior itself is important to consider. In normal homeostatic eating, meal size and appetite need to be studied separately from the overall amount consumed. Even if overall energy intake is in equilibrium with expenditure, consuming that amount of food rapidly in a brief period of time would certainly challenge physiological equilibrium. Everyone binge occasionally, which is normal. However, when binging occurs repeatedly over extended periods of time, it becomes maladaptive since neither the capacity nor the clearance and feedback mechanisms of our alimentary and central regulatory system were designed for such an overload. Disorder eating patterns can involve underrating or overrating as well as combinations of both. For instance, inappropriate self restriction or restriction is a compensatory behavior used by many bulimics, whereas beginning is characteristic of the binge purge type of anorexia nervosa. Whether these combinations reflect homeostatic compensatory attempts or rather are part of the physiology of the disorders is not known. Nonetheless, the fact that maladaptive patterns are maintained in spite of the negative consequences associated with them characterize many of the behavioral disorders, including substance abuse and disorder eating. The given movie entitled Dead Man Walking is about a man named Matthew Poncelet and who was sentenced to death for the murder of a teenage couple. He committed his crimes with his friend who was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole as his scheduled execution date approaches. Poncelet asks Sister Helen Pregin, with whom he has corresponded, to help him with a final appeal. Sister Helen decides to visit Poncelet, who is arrogant, sexist, and racist, and does not even pretend to feel remorse. He protests his innocent and insists Vitello killed the two teenager after many visits, and she establishes a relationship with him. And Poncelet asks Sister Helen to be his spiritual advisor through his execution, and she agrees. Sister Helen tells Poncelet uh, that his redemption is possible only if he takes responsibility for what he did. Just before he is taken from his cell, Poncelet tearfully admits to Sister Helen that he had killed the boy and raped the girl. Before Vitello killed her, as he is prepared for execution, he appeals to the boy's father for forgiveness and tells the girl's parents that he hopes his death brings them peace. And in the movie, before the killing has happened, Poncelet told us that they were in influence of drugs and alcohol. And we all know that these substances are linked with violence. He also told Sister Helen that he did what he did because he wanted to impress his friend Vitello, and those acts are example of non-homeostatic motivation. We people tend to have motivation to explore our surroundings even when we are not pursuing specific goals, and we also exhibit what can only be described as curiosity. For example, watching others of the same or different species, or investigating objects that have no relevance to us. And we like to explore our environment, even when to do so is potentially life threatening for us. And that will be all. Thank you.